Hello, and welcome to lesson 5 of our visit to the planets. And today we are focusing on Saturn, and we're using the amazing music of Gustav Holst to help us travel through the galaxy and find out about the planets themselves and Roman and Greek mythology and how the names of planets have come to be, but also very much looking and listening to the amazing music of Gustav Holst. And we will be coming on to the Holst in a little while. But what I thought we'd do today to mix things up a little bit, because very often we start with the music, is to actually start today's lesson with thinking about who Saturn actually is, as in the Roman god of Saturn. Saturn is quite a mixed character, shall we say. Some very positive things about Saturn, and then there's some very sort of not so sure about that things about Saturn. So let's have a think about him. He is the Roman god of agriculture, harvest, wealth, and abundance, sowing, seeds, all that sort of thing. He was very much a farmer in that respect. His Greek counterpart is the god Cronus, the god of time. And that is why I suppose in this instance, Holst is comparing Saturn, the bringer of old age. It's to do with the time factor. Although when you look up Roman gods and you look up Saturn, it isn't specifically said that he is the god of time, but his Greek counterpart was the god of time. Saturn's often depicted as an older man with a long white beard. And as we'd had a picture of an older man with a long white beard for Jupiter, and there's going to be another another god next week who is an older man with a long white beard. There's only so many pictures of older men with long white beards, so there's no picture of our Saturn today. And that's maybe somebody that you could have a go at drawing and creating from the descriptions that you hear. He was the father of Jupiter. That's quite important. We think of Jupiter as being the king of the gods. Saturn was the father of the king of the gods. And he was supposed to have been very strong-willed, an intellectual. He saw all men as equal. And in that respect, he was very fair. But, well, we'll find out in a minute, sometimes not totally 100% fair. He's usually portrayed holding a scythe, which links in with the agriculture because a scythe is for cutting down crops, or a pruning knife. And there's a picture of him on a wall in Pompeii. Amazing place. I've never visited Pompeii. It's on my list of things I'd love to do. Just an archaeological wonder. But there's a wall in Pompeii and there's a painting of Saturn on that wall, and he's wearing a white robe and he's got a white veil over his head. Now, Saturn was believed to be one of the very early kings of Rome who brought prosperity to the area. Again, probably built on the farming side of things because he was supposed to have taught people how to farm correctly, and that meant that prosperity followed. There's a less pleasant story about Saturn, and we're just going to touch on it briefly, because the tale goes that he actually ate his own children to prevent them from overthrowing him. And some of the pictures of Saturn are of him devouring his offspring. Now, not very pleasant at all. They were, however, all saved. And basically, eventually they did overthrow him, and that's how Jupiter became king of the gods. So that's the not so nice side of Saturn, but there are some very good positives as well. He had a festival named after him. So Saturn's festival is Saturnalia, which was originally celebrated on the 17th of December. And we'll come back to that in a little while and talk about that Saturnalia festival again towards the end of the lesson. So that sort of gives you an idea of who Saturn was, who this Roman god was that this amazing planet has been named after. Now, we are going to go now onto the music. We're going to have a listen to the beginning of Holst's favourite movement, Saturn, the bringer of old age. Now, have a think about what old age means to you. Old age, I mean, to me, old isn't old anymore, because I know lots of people who decades ago would have been considered old, and they're as sprightly as you like. So it's all relative. But Saturn, the bringer of old age, what does that mean to you? Now, this was Holst's favourite movement of the whole thing. And we're going to have a listen to that opening thing. It's 8 or 9 minutes long, so we're not going to listen to all of it, because obviously, wow, I would have real trouble inputting 8 or 9 minutes worth of music for a lesson. It's too big. I've created today's recording, computer and everything else, to avoid the copyright issues, as you probably already know. What I didn't say was, we have the worksheet. We have the worksheet. So everything that I'm telling you, all the information, all the activities that we're going to be doing, they're all on today's worksheet that you can find as a JPEG on the Facebook page or is on the website. But as always, you can manage with just a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. I would say a pencil today for today's activity, because we're going to be doing some drawing. So a pencil would make more sense. But, up to you. Totally up to you. So let's talk about this piece of music that we're going to listen to. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the opening as it's playing, and then tell you a little bit more about the rest of the piece of music. So here's the beginning of Saturn. So it begins quietly. It's marked as P. And it's in 4/4 time. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's at an adagio tempo, so it's quite slow. And actually, the tempo remains basically slow throughout. You can hear flutes and bassoons, and there was a harp playing. It's like a ticking of a clock. It's a bit creepy, isn't it? A bit eerie. It's alternating between two chords. Ding, dong, ding, dong. It's quite solemn, quite sad. Mournful would be a word I would use. Could reflect the passage of time, Saturn being the god of time. Now, in a minute, we're going to start. It's like a march. And this could be the march of the passage of time. And that's played on trombones to start with, which actually was Holst's instrument. That's what he used to play. And then it moves into the rest of the orchestra and develops from there. So there's quite a lot going on just in that opening section that you can hear. Very eerie, very mysterious, very solemn, very mournful, sad melodies. Later on, there is more percussion used, but the only percussion that is being used are timpanis, the drums, and tubular bells, which are sort of bells that hang down, that you have a special hammer that you hit the bell with. They're amazing. I love tubular bells. And the tubular bells later in the movement are a bit like chimes of a clock. And again, linking in with that passage of time. As I said, the music at the start is that slow march begins to sort of go into that slow march played on the trombones, and then later on it's played by the whole orchestra, and the music develops, and there are little passages where the music gets a little bit more excited and animated, and then it all slows back down again right through to the end of the movement. Holst loved this movement, definitely his favourite. I don't know that it's mine. Jupiter, I think, is my favourite, but you know, it's interesting to know that that's Holst. He really loved this movement. So, what would I like you to do now that we've had a tiny little listen, and I've talked all over it, but that you can sort of see how it all fits together? Well, I'm going to play it again. I might even play it twice. And what I want you to do is, while you're having a listen, think about how the music reflects that title, Saturn, the bringer of old age. And what does it make you think of as you listen to it? And it's your ideas. You can't be wrong. It's your impression. It's your thoughts. And what I want you to do is draw a picture as you're listening to the opening of this piece, and think about what you would include on it. So you may decide to use this idea of the passing of time, so the ticking of the clock, or you don't know how you might do it. You might have a clock in there of some description. You might have a, you know, like Big Ben or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's your picture. Or are you going to depict old age? Or are you going to depict the god Saturn? Or are you going to do a mixture of all three? It's entirely up to you. So as you listen, without me talking over it, have a listen to the music. Think about what that music is telling you, how it's descriptive of its title, but what else is it bringing to the party as such? And think about how you can depict that through a picture, because there are composers out there that write pieces of music based on pictures, and what we're doing is almost doing it in reverse. So I will disappear, get out of your way so I'm not a distraction, and let's have a listen to the music again. Okay, let's have a listen again, just to give you time to finish off your amazing pictures. Maybe add some colour. Think about what colours you would use to reflect whatever it is that you've drawn. Here we go. Okay, I bet you've drawn something absolutely amazing. And as I said before, it can't be wrong because it's your interpretation of what you've heard. And that's really important, that you realize that, it's exactly what you think. It's what you think. It's your interpretation, because we all hear things differently. We all pick up on different things when we're listening to a piece of music. Interpretation, it's all very different. So, um, let's move on. Let's have a look at Saturn itself, because it's just such an amazing, beautiful planet. It is the sixth planet from the sun, and it has the shortest day in the solar system of only 10.7 Earth hours. It's mostly made of hydrogen and helium, and it takes 80 minutes, so an hour and 10 minutes, for sunlight to reach Saturn from the sun. It orbits the sun in about 29.4 Earth years, which is a very long time. And Saturn's rings, which are iconic, everybody, when you say Saturn, you think about the rings. Saturn's rings are thought to be pieces of comets, asteroids, or shattered moons that broke up before they reached the planet. And actually, we've been watching a program about the planets on the BBC, and one of the things that was said was you can almost think of Saturn as the god when devouring his children. Saturn, the planet, devours moons and things, and that's how the rings came to be formed. It was an interesting analogy. The rings are billions of small chunks of ice and rock that are coated in other materials like dust. Now, normally, if you've got a lot of dust on the rings, then they would be quite dull. And so that leads scientists to think that the rings, in the bigger scheme of things, aren't that old, because they are still so bright. Saturn's not conducive to life as we know it because of its atmosphere, but some of the moons around Saturn might be, and that's very important. There are 274 confirmed moons around Saturn as of last week. I mean, things change, and it's good to check the NASA website because they keep things up to date. But as of last week, certainly, there were 274 confirmed moons around Saturn, and some of these moons, like Titan, the largest, or Enceladus, could possibly support life, and that's quite important. Now, there have been missions that have been sent out, spacecraft that have been sent out and have visited Saturn. There's only been the four. The first one was Pioneer 11, which was the first to reach Saturn. Then there was Voyager 1 and 2, which flew past in 1980 and 1981 respectively, and were able to provide more information about Saturn's rings. But none of them were actually specifically staying to study Saturn. It was that they were doing other stuff as well, and they went and spent a few hours looking at Saturn. Cassini, which is the spacecraft you can see in the picture there, Cassini was launched in 1997, and it was the first of those spacecrafts to actually orbit Saturn. And Cassini, its mission lasted for 13 years before it was actually plunged into Saturn's atmosphere and it was destroyed. What's very significant is that it touched plumes of ice coming from Enceladus during its study of the moon, and it's thought to be that it's the plumes of ice are thought to be a subsurface ocean leaking into space. And so Enceladus is a moon that really they wish to study in more depth, because they feel that that is a definite possibility for sustained life in some way. So it's definitely on their list of places to go back to and have a look and find out more information, which is fascinating. I mean, the idea that you've got this sort of salty water, icy salty water that is escaping from Enceladus, in this sort of, this subsurface ocean leaking into space is quite a magical thought. What's also been discussed is the fact that over time, I mean, not in our lifetime, but in years to come, many years to come, Saturn's rings will start to disappear, and we won't be able to see them. So, but that's way into the future. We're talking thousands upon thousands of years. So it's not like tomorrow. But scientifically, that is something that they've sort of discussed. Let's have a look at how Saturn has influenced us and in different ways. We talk about literature quite a lot when we talk about the influence places have, whether that be the god, or whether that be the planet, or whether that be the music. And in this instance, we're talking about the god Saturn. Now, Albius Tibullus wrote a poem called Saturn's Day. And that's significant because that has led to the word Saturday in English. Now, there's been a couple of previous days of the week that we discovered were named after Roman gods. Saturday is also one of them, named after Saturn. And I talked a little bit earlier on when we were talking about the Roman god about Saturnalia being this festival that is celebrated on the 17th of December. Now, in actual fact, the celebrations were extended. So initially it was the 17th of December, but then they were extended to take up to 7 days. And it was based upon a pagan festival during the winter solstice. Later, Roman Christians replaced Saturnalia with Christmas. And the celebrations, if you look back at Tudor times, and we did a project about Tudor music and we looked at Tudor Christmas, celebrations were very similar. So we talked about in Tudor times there being a king of misrule who basically took in control of all the proceedings and could tell people to do silly things. And Henry VIII was quite happy for the king of misrule to be in charge, and he would do whatever he was told by the king of misrule, etc. That was something that came from these celebrations for Saturnalia that then morphed into celebrations for Christmas. So it's very interesting looking at how different festivals are influenced by other festivals. So we had Saturnalia, and then that was sort of influenced based on a pagan festival of the winter for the winter solstice, and then that became Christmas. The celebration side of it was sort of linked in to the Christian celebration of Christmas, and so it's that development as you go through. Fascinating to see how history influences things. Okay, now we've reached the end of today's lesson. It's been quite a quick one. It feels we've covered a lot actually. Other activities you could have a try at doing. So you could have a go at creating an acrostic poem using the word Saturn. So write Saturn down the side, and then you have sentences coming off from each letter to describe. You could describe the planet, you could describe the god, or you could talk more about the music. Or, and this is all on the worksheet if you wanted to have a go at doing this, all of the instructions for this are on the worksheet in picture form. You could have a go at creating your own planet. Here I have Saturn. Here's my planet Saturn. Now, to create this planet of Saturn, we're using recycled materials. We're using junk, basically. It's very handy having a husband who is a junk model maker, because he can come up with some fantastic ideas, because that's his job. And so what he suggested was you could take 2 plastic bottles, and you cut the 2 plastic bottles so that you cut the bottoms off them. You then take some paint, some yellow paint, and paint the inside of the bottom of the bottle. Okay, with me so far? Let that dry, and then paint some red sort of swirls. Let me see if I can get this in a little bit further for you to see. You paint some red swirls over the top of the yellow to sort of, you know, create those swirls effects that you can see on Jupiter, the planet. You then take a piece of cardboard, just normal brown cardboard, and you put a plate on top of the cardboard and you cut round it to make a circle. That's going to be your ring, but obviously a piece of brown cardboard doesn't look particularly great. So what we do is we take some tin foil, normal tin foil, scrunch it up in a ball so that it creates more of a textured look. Scrunch it up first, then flatten it out and then place it over the top of your piece of cardboard so that you are covering the whole of your ring in the silver foil. And once you've done that, because you don't want, I mean, my husband normally uses masking tape for everything. There's no masking tape used for this one. It's sellotape. We're using clear tape because obviously you want to be able to see the rings. You want to be able to see the planet. You don't want it to be that you are seeing masking tape. So use clear tape, sellotape, to stick your 2 bottle bottoms to your ring. And then you have a Saturn. What a clever little make. You could do that quite easily, I am sure. And as I say, step-by-step instructions are on the worksheets along with everything else, and it's all done in pictures so that you can see the whole process of how to do it. So we have reached the end of today's lesson. All about Saturn, an amazing planet, an amazing piece of music by Gustav Holst. Beautiful piece of music. Next week, we're going to be looking at the planet Uranus. And the piece of music from the Planet Suite is called Uranus the Magician. So we'll have to have a little think about, wow, Uranus the Magician, what does he do in the music to make it sound magical? That's something we'll be exploring next week. I hope you have a fantastic week. Doing whatever it is you're doing. It'd be great if you do make some of these planets or your amazing pictures. If you want to post them on the Theatre of Music Facebook page, please do, because it would be great to see some of your work on there. But in the meantime, that's all from me, and I will see you next week.